Hello everyone, welcome to the Wuxia Audiobook. Today, we will continue to the next part of the series Renegade Immortal.
Chapter 76, The Strange Flying Sword. Lu San jerked his head back. He gnashed his teeth and said, "You really were in spy." Yang Sen's eyes were filled with rage as he looked at Wang Lin. The dark-faced man's pupils shrank. He knew that the method Wang Lin used to get the box wasn't something a mortal could do. The middle-aged scholar was also stunned. He looked at Wang Lin with a complex expression and sighed. Song Xing shouted, "You dare!" Then, he quickly jumped forward and grabbed toward Wang Lin's head. Song Xing's move caused Lu San's group to be confused, but Lu San didn't stop Song crossing. Everyone else also moved out of the way, opening a path to Wang Lin. Wang Lin didn't even raise his head. Instead, he opened the box and saw a very shriveled-up ginseng. This ginseng's body was very small, but it had countless roots. There was a yellow talisman on the ginseng, covering up the spiritual energy inside it. Song Xing had already gotten close. He smiled as he was ready to break Wang Lin's head. Then, his body suddenly quivered as an invisible force stopped him. Song Xing was tossed to the side and didn't get back up. The bizarre scene before them caused everyone to be stunned. Wang Lin didn't tear the talisman off the ginseng, but looked at it for a while. Then, he sighed and said, "You see an old friend and you won't even come out to say hi?" With a series of rustling sounds, the cold-looking youth walked out of the forest. There was an invisible force around his body. All of the black-clothed men were pushed to the side as he walked by. In addition, the 3 fireballs floating in the air returned to the youth and circled around him. The moment the black-clothed men saw the youth, they respectfully said, "We greet the boss." The youth didn't even look at Song Xing, who was coughing up blood, but looked at Wang Lin and said, "The person I know couldn't have not changed at all in 10 years. Who exactly are you?" Wang Lin looked at the youth, but didn't say a word. Instead, he took out yellow paper from his bag of holding. The moment the cold-looking youth saw the paper, he was stunned. He looked at Wang Lin a bit more, then frowned. He said, "Friend, what exactly is this?" "Friend, please give me the ginseng. It is very important to me." Wang Lin was stunned and looked at the youth in front of him for a while. A doubt appeared in his heart. He spread out his divine sense and found something abnormal in the sky. He coldly smiled in his heart, then threw the ginseng over and said, "Forget it. I got the wrong person." A myriad of complex feelings crossed the youth's eyes. He caught the ginseng and said, "Thank you. Farewell." With that, he turned to leave when a dark cloud suddenly appeared. The moment the dark cloud appeared, a gust of wind caused everyone in the mighty escort to take several steps back. The dark cloud quickly moved and descended. As the cloud got lower, a strange gust of wind appeared and became stronger and stronger. A middle-aged man dressed in white stepped onto the gust of wind and descended. The moment he appeared, an escort guard exploded into a mist of blood. Then, several other guards also exploded and turned into mist made of blood. The blood mist moved strangely in the air. They quickly gathered together and formed a shiny drop of blood. The middle-aged man opened his mouth and sucked in. The drop of blood entered his mouth and his face turned red. He said, "Jiang Hu, you met someone you know. Why are you afraid of admitting it?" Jiang Hu's face quickly turned cold and respectfully said, "Teacher, disciple doesn't know this person." Wang Lin's expression remained calm. He sent out his divine sense and was stunned. This middle-aged man had already reached the peak of the 15th layer. The middle-aged man smiled and said to Wang Lin, "Fellow cultivator, do you know my disciple?" Wang Lin's expression didn't change at all. He said, "So what if I know or if I don't know him?" The middle-aged man was stunned. He looked at Wang Lin for a bit, then suddenly smiled. "Makes no difference. Although you're only at the 8th layer, if I drink your blood, it will still increase my cultivation a bit." Jiang Hu's face suddenly changed. He quickly got in front of the middle-aged man and said, "Teacher, this person is my childhood friend. Please, please spare him." A cold light flashed across the middle-aged man's eyes. He said, "Leave. Go and gather the blood essence of all of the mortals here. You have no business with this matter." Jiang Hu was about to speak when the middle-aged man sneered as he said some words. Jiang Hu's face suddenly became pale and he started to bleed out of his orifices as large quantities of sweat dripped from his forehead. Wang Lin raised his brow. He activated his attraction technique and grabbed toward the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man's expression changed slightly. He let out a cold snort as he spat out a green light. The green light turned into a flying sword and slashed at the hand. Wang Lin's attraction technique had already reached an unimaginable level. The hand split into two hands. One grabbed Jiang Hu and the other grabbed the flying sword. The small green sword started to vibrate. The light the sword emitted flickered on and off. The middle-aged man's expression suddenly changed and he threw out a black sword scabbard from his bag of holding. Without a word, he shot out several red lights from his hand. The moment the scabbard appeared, the green sword that was grabbed by the attraction technique suddenly disappeared. When it reappeared, it was next to the scabbard and fused with it. Wang Lin's face looked calm, but his heart was shocked. This was the first time the attraction technique had failed. A cold light flashed across his eyes. He slapped his bag of holding and several pieces of black wood appeared. The pieces of black wood fused into a whip and quickly flew out. Situnan's voice appeared in Wang Lin's ears. Wang Lin, there is something strange about that sword. The moment the flying sword entered the scabbard, it started to emit a buzzing sound as if it was facing a lot of resistance. After sinking in 1/5 of the way, it was no longer able to go any deeper. The green sword suddenly turned to blue and yanked itself out of the scabbard and slashed at the whip. This whip was something he got from Jiang Guang. When he was in closed-door training, he refined it to belong to him with advice from Situnan. Wang Lin controlled the whip to go around the flying sword and charge directly at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man sneered. He ignored the whip and pointed at the flying sword. He muttered a few words, then the flying sword shook and suddenly disappeared. It reappeared in front of the middle-aged man and slashed downwards. The middle-aged man grinned and spat out a drop of golden blood. The drop of golden blood immediately turned into thin threads and entered the flying sword. Chapter 77, Old Man Jimmo. Wang Lin frowned. Just as he was about to retrieve the whip, a small red sword flew out of the ghostly sword. The red sword slashed down at a speed several times faster than its main body. The whip quickly split into two. It transformed back into pieces of wood and fell from the sky. The middle-aged man revealed a murderous look. He waved his right hand and the sword flew toward Wang Lin. Wang Lin frowned. He grabbed Jiang Hu and threw him back. Then, he quickly backed up. The flying sword was speeding toward Wang Lin. An illusion appeared at the tip of the sword. Like lightning, the sword suddenly appeared in front of Wang Lin. Wang Lin's expression changed. He waved his hand and a piece of jade appeared in it. The jade glowed and a blue light screen appeared, blocking the sword. The sword slashed down and the light screen started to crack. It couldn't hold on much longer. Wang Lin took a deep breath. He spat out a mouthful of spiritual energy into the light screen. The light blue color started to turn green and its faint color started to become more solid. The cracks started to seal back up, blocking the attack of the sword, but a faint crack appeared on the jade. What is this? The middle-aged man's eyes narrowed. He looked at Wang Lin and said, "It seems that you're not only at the 8th layer. However, even if you're at the Foundation establishment stage, you won't be able to get away alive from my flying sword." With that, the middle-aged man pointed with his finger while his eyes revealed a serious expression. He waved his hand and the flying sword flew back and entered the scabbard again. This time, it went halfway in and turned from blue to black and flew out of the scabbard again. A cold light flashed across Wang Lin's eyes. This was the first time Wang Lin had fought someone who was at the same cultivation level as him. Although their cultivation level was the same, his opponent obviously had better magical treasures. Wang Lin could feel that the sword had gotten a lot more powerful and Zhou Peng's jade wouldn't be able to withstand it. He didn't hesitate. He slapped his bag of holding and took out an ancient jade. The moment the ancient jade appeared, it released a majestic aura. This ancient jade was the life-saving treasure Lu Wenju gave to Wang Lin. Wang Lin didn't even bat an eye. He spat out a mouthful of spiritual energy and pointed at the ancient jade. Instantly, numerous golden symbols floated out of the ancient jade. Wang Lin's expression didn't change at all. He coldly stared at the middle-aged man. Killing intent appeared in his eyes. The middle-aged man's pupils shrank. He hesitated a bit, then clenched his teeth and took out 2 golden orbs. The 2 golden orbs flew into the flying sword. The flying sword was currently black and covered in shining, golden spots. The sword circled around once, then flew toward Wang Lin. Several black swirls appeared near the sword. The coldness in Wang Lin's eyes intensified. He didn't even bother with the sword, he just pointed at the ancient jade before him. The golden symbols on the ancient jade suddenly glowed and came out of the jade. The symbols lined up. There was a total of 9 symbols. The flying sword was flying toward Wang Lin. He formed a seal with his hand and 3 of the symbols began to glow. The 3 symbols quickly appeared around the sword. Lightning connected the 3 symbols, forming a prison and trapping the flying sword. The flying sword was like a trapped beast, releasing a strong buzzing sound. It charged around in the cage and, every time it collided with the cage, the symbols would shine. The middle-aged man's expression finally changed and he said, This is a core treasure? Wang Lin had learned from Situnan what a core treasure was. It was simply a treasure made by a core formation cultivator. If a nascent soul cultivator made a treasure, it was called nascent treasure. The middle-aged man quickly revealed a look of fear. He waved his hand and grabbed toward the scabbard. Wang Lin let out a cold smile. The seal on his hand changed. The remaining 6 symbols instantly started to shine and charged toward the middle-aged man. The fear in the middle-aged man increased greatly. He quickly took out several pieces of jade, hoping that they would increase his chances of escaping. Before the pieces of jade could even activate, they exploded under the effect of the golden symbols. They didn't manage to stop the golden symbols one bit. The middle-aged man revealed a look of despair and shouted, Fellow cultivator, I am Old Man, Jimo's disciple. Before he could finish speaking, the golden symbols appeared before him. The first symbol pressed into his chest. His chest quickly caved in, causing him to cough out a mouthful of blood. The second symbol followed quickly after. The middle-aged man bled out from his orifices and his chest had been pierced through. The third symbol quickly followed as well and the middle-aged man's body completely disintegrated along with his bag of holding. Only the sword scabbard was completely unharmed and fell to the ground. Wang Lin took a deep breath. He pointed toward the ancient jade. Suddenly, the 3 remaining golden symbols paused and entered the ancient jade again. Also, after the middle-aged man died, the frequency of the collisions from the flying sword slowed down until it eventually stopped moving. Wang Lin waved his hand. The 3 symbols trembled. 2 of the symbols collapsed and only one of them followed Wang Lin's call and returned to the jade. Wang Lin carefully put the piece of jade back into his bag of holding. This piece of jade originally only had 1 attack, but, with Situnan's help, he managed to split it into 9 attacks. Although each attack was much weaker, it allowed him to use it more often. After doing all of that, he took a deep breath. His forehead was covered in sweat. This was the most vicious fight he's had since he started cultivating. He activated the attraction technique and retrieved the flying sword and scabbard to examine them. Wang Lin, I didn't act before not because I didn't want to, but because my nascent soul essence has a limit, so it can't be carelessly wasted. Plus, you have to experience these life and death battles to help you grow in the future. This time, Situnan's voice was serious for once. Wang Lin nodded. He didn't say a word as he curiously checked out the treasure in his hand. Situnan explained. This flying sword is really strange. That little baby could even display its full power. However, the real treasure here is that sword scabbard. Chapter 78, Teng Family City. Wang Lin was checking out the treasures when he suddenly heard a whisper from behind. He shot a golden light into the flying sword and turned around. Zhang Hu opened his eyes. After he saw Wang Lin, he was startled. He looked around and saw the flying sword and sword scabbard in Wang Lin's hands. Zhang Hu revealed a joyous look and asked, "He died?" Wang Lin chuckled and nodded. "Yes." "Zhang Hu, did you say you didn't know me before because of him?" Zhang Hu quickly touched his chest. After pondering for a while, he said, "He really is dead." "Wang Lin, this is not a good place to talk. Once I finish all these people, we can catch up." With that, he raised his right hand and 3 fireballs appeared. All of the people in the surroundings were completely stunned. What they just saw was something they had never thought they would see in their lives. When they saw the fireballs in Jiang Hu's hand, their faces revealed looks of fear. As for the people dressed in black, they also carefully looked at Jiang Hu with fear in their eyes. Wang Lin frowned. Just as he was about to speak, Jiang Hu took a step and threw the fireballs. However, the target was not Lu San's group, but the group of men dressed in black. In terms of their worth, the lives of these mortals were like ants. Without any ability to fight back, the men in black, including Song Hang, were caught by the fireballs. The strange thing was that their whole bodies weren't burned to ashes. Several strange golden drops of blood formed and were swallowed by Jiang Hu. Lu San's group were roasted by the heat of the fire until their hair curled and skin cracked, but none of them dared to move one bit. Seeing that Jiang Hu formed 3 more fireballs, Wang Lin said, in a heavy tone, "Jiang Hu, don't kill any more." Jiang Hu turned his head and looked at Wang Lin, then said, "If we don't kill these people, then they will go back and report everything. The person you killed is my teacher and also Old Man Jimo's 6th disciple. If he finds out about this, it will be hard for us to escape death." The middle-aged scholar was one of the few who was still calm. He quickly said, "To immortals, we promise that we won't talk." Before he finished speaking, Jiang Hu frowned and sneered, "Promise not to talk? That's not up to you. When they take out your soul and refine it, you will tell them everything." Although he was talking to the middle-aged scholar, his eyes were on Wang Lin. Wang Lin pondered for a while. He waved his hand and the remaining 6 or 7 people forcibly moved until they landed in front of Wang Lin. Jiang Hu withdrew the fireballs and stood at the side, silent. Wang Lin took out a piece of jade from his bag of holding. This was the jade he got from Jiang Quang when he went to the exchange with Wang Hao. He vaguely remembered that there was technique inside that would wipe people's memories. After carefully searching the jade, he found the technique. Wang Lin checked it once and put the jade away. Wang Lin's eyes looked at the group and glowed blue. The blue light entered their eyes and their eyes also glowed blue before they fainted and fell onto the ground. Jiang Hu secretly sighed. He opened his mouth to say something, but didn't speak in the end. After Wang Lin finished the technique, he looked at Jiang Hu and flew off into the distance. Jiang Hu sighed. He spat out a golden ball, got on it, and flew after Wang Lin. The two flew in the air for a long time. Jiang Hu started to run out of breath and landed on a mountain top while Wang Lin slowly floated down. Jiang Hu calmed his breathing, then found a place to sit down. He took out 2 pieces of sweet potato and passed one to Wang Lin. "I baked this. Check how it tastes," he said. Wang Lin took the sweet potato. He felt like he had returned to 10 years ago when the two had just met. "When I left the Heng Yue sect back then, I didn't go home, but wandered around, looking to join another cultivation sect. I got lucky and consumed some herbs and somehow managed to reach the first layer of qi condensation. I have to thank the Weasel's booklet for that. After meeting Bai Zan, he decided not to kill me after he saw that I was at the first layer. Instead, he made me his disciple to help him gather the blood of mortals. He left a poison in me so he can control my life and death. Before, I didn't want to say I knew you because he was nearby, but, thankfully, you killed him. That destroyed the poison in my body and I'm finally free." Jiang Hu took a bite of sweet potato as he quickly explained what had happened in the past 10 years. Wang Lin felt very regrettable. Although Jiang Hu's story was very simple and short, he could see from Jiang Hu's expression that these 10 years had been very difficult for him. Jiang Hu revealed a look of envy and said, "Wang Lin, we haven't seen each other in 10 years. Seeing that you could kill my teacher, you must have reached foundation establishment. My teacher's flying sword is very powerful. He said he could only use 2/5 of its power, but even then, no one below foundation establishment could compete with him." Wang Lin shook his head and said, "I haven't reached foundation establishment yet. Do you know where this flying sword came from?" Jiang Hu looked at Wang Lin with a surprised look, but he didn't ask further. He carefully thought about it and said, "I think he talked about it once. I think he said he found it in a cave and only got it because of the great opportunities at that moment. He always viewed it as a great treasure. Also, that sword scabbard is also a treasure." Teacher treasured that scabbard several times more than the flying word. I once heard from my teacher that besides him, unless someone is at the core formation stage, they can't refine it for themselves. Wang Lin found a rock to sit down on. He pondered for a while, then asked, "Tell me about old man Jimo so we can at least be on guard against a few things." Jiang Hu swallowed the sweet potato in his mouth and said, "Old man Jimo is an independent cultivator. It's said that he has already reached cow formation. He cares about his reputation a lot, so he will definitely be out searching for us when he finds out about Bai Zan's death. You better return to the Heng Yue sect. As for me, I can go hide in the Teng family city. Even old man Jimo won't dare to be arrogant there. As long as I stay in the city, I should be safe." Wang Lin wryly smiled and said, "The Heng Yue sect only exists in name now." Jiang Hu was startled and said, "I heard about this before. 4 years ago, the Xuandao sect stole the Heng Yue mountain, but I heard that the Heng Yue sect disciples migrated. Did you not migrate with them?" Wang Lin didn't want to discuss this matter and asked, "What kind of place is the Teng family city?" Chapter 79, Refining the Flying Sword. Jiang Hu stuffed the remaining sweet potato in his mouth. After he finished eating, he said, "The Teng family city belongs to a large cultivation family in the northern part of Zhao. It is said that they have nascent soul experts in the family. If a cultivator wants to enter the city, they have to pay 1 low-quality spirit stone. If they wish to live there, they must pay 1 mid-quality spirit stone per month. With all of the spirit stones I have gathered, I can live there for 6 months." Wang Lin rubbed his chin and asked, "Jiang Hu, does this Teng family city have an exchange fair?" Jiang Hu nodded and said, "There do. Every month, there is a large exchange fair where all of the surrounding cultivators come. Are you going to go exchange some things?" Wang Lin nodded and smiled. "What? Do you not welcome me following you? I don't have many spirit stones, so I'm relying on you." The Teng family was a very famous cultivation family in the northern part of the country of Zhao. The family head, Teng Xingsan, reached the nascent soul stage in the last 500 years, so he didn't go to the wars in the rank 4 countries. He was also Wufeng Valley's minister, so his position was very high. Because the Teng family had an ancestor like him, no one dared to mess with them, even though they weren't a big sect. The Teng family's exchange fair provided a platform for the cultivators to trade in. At the beginning of each month, Teng family city was very busy. Where there are a lot of people, there will naturally be a lot of conflicts. Sometimes, people would fight the moment they met. Because of that, the Teng family ancestor, Teng Xingsan, set a no-fighting rule in the city. Everyone in the city was prohibited from fighting. The moment the order came out, everyone in the city obeyed, especially after Teng Xingsan personally came out and killed a few cow formation cultivators. On this day, 2 rainbows flew across the sky toward the Teng family city. One of them said, "Wang Lin, flying is prohibited in the city, so we need to walk from here." These 2 were Wang Lin and Jiang Hu. Wang Lin's gaze swept the Teng family city before him. This city wasn't big. To be honest, it was more like a large town than a city. Outside the city stood 2 Teng family disciples greeting travelers with smiles and handing out tokens. Wang Lin expanded his divine sense and immediately found out that both of them were at the 3rd layer, like Jiang Hu. Looking at the long line going into the city, Wang Lin wasn't in any rush. He checked everyone in the line and found that everyone was a cultivator, but the strongest was only at the 13th layer. After a long time, just as Wang Lin and Jiang Hu were about to arrive at the gate, a figure suddenly appeared in the distance. The figure released a very strong aura. Wang Lin sent out his divine sense and was stunned. This person wasn't old at all, only about 30 years old, but had already reached foundation establishment. This person quickly arrived at the front of the gate. He waved his hand and created a wind that blew everyone away. The people with lower cultivation were sent rolling on the ground. Jiang Hu would have also been sent rolling if Wang Lin hadn't caught him right away. Wang Lin was also sent back a few steps. His expression was normal as he coldly looked at that person. The person let out a cold snort and walked to the gate. He threw out a token and the 2 guards became very respectful. One of them even followed the person into the city. Jiang Hu revealed a look of envy and asked, What cultivation level is that person at to have that much power with just a wave of his sleeve? Wang Lin lightly said, Foundation Establishment. When it was their turn to enter the city, Jiang Hu quickly handed over 2 low-quality spirit stones and the 2 entered the city. Jiang Hu had been here many times before. He led Wang Lin through the city before paying 2 mid-quality spirit stones to get rooms for themselves. Jiang Hu smiled at Wang Lin. We don't have much money left. I hope this 500-year-old ginseng sells well. We will split the profit evenly between us. The 2 talked for a bit before returning to their own rooms. Wang Lin returned to his room and sat down cross-legged. He took out Jiang Hu's master's flying sword and sword scabbard. After watching them for a long time, his eyes lit up and he threw the flying sword into the air. His hand formed a seal and pointed at the flying sword. A golden light flew out from the flying sword. Then, the flying sword suddenly moved like it returned to life and tried to fly away. Just as it charged halfway across the room, it seemed to have hit an invisible wall. It changed directions and charged again, but was stopped once again. After charging in a few directions, the flying sword stopped, released a humming sound, and charged toward Wang Lin. Wang Lin's expression was normal as he took out the life-saving treasure and sent out the golden symbol. The flying sword seemed to be afraid of the symbol, so it backed away. Wang Lin waved his right hand and the golden symbol started to circle around Wang Lin's body. The sword didn't seem to dare to attack Wang Lin again and started to wildly charge around the room faster and faster. Wang Lin didn't even bat an eye. He spat out a mouthful of spiritual power to surround the sword. The flying sword suddenly disappeared and reappeared in front of the door and was about to charge out. At that moment, the flying sword turned from black to blue and its humming became a lot weaker. Without a word, Wang Lin pointed with his right hand and the golden symbol charged toward the flying sword. The sword's humming revealed a hint of fear as it backed away when the golden symbol got closer. Then, the sword suddenly disappeared again and reappeared near the window. The color of the sword suddenly changed from blue to green. The sword now looked exactly like it did before it entered the sword scabbard. Wang Lin's eyes darted across the room. He noticed that the sword's teleportation ability had something to do with its color. Without a master, it seemed its teleportation cost a lot of spiritual power. Situnan slowly said, the more consciousness a treasure has, the harder it is to refine. Even after killing its master, it will still take a lot of effort to make it your own treasure. Wang Lin narrowed his eyes. He knew that this flying sword had consciousness and even had a teleportation skill. The more difficult it was to refine, the more he wanted to make it his own. Seeing that the flying sword was about to escape, Wang Lin waved his hand and 2 golden symbols flew out. The golden symbols blocked the flying sword's path and were positioned so that even if the sword teleported again, it wouldn't be able to get away. Chapter 80, Blood Refining Technique. After teleporting 3 times, the flying sword's color changed to light green. Both the light and sound that were emitting from the sword clearly showed that it was much weaker. Shortly after, the flying sword that hadn't teleported in a while was pushed into a corner by the 2 golden symbols. Wang Lin spat out another mouthful of spiritual energy. The flying sword was too slow and was surrounded by the spiritual energy. The 2 golden symbols circled the flying sword like 2 golden dragons. Every time the flying sword tried to escape, they'd force it back, so the flying sword couldn't get out. As time passed, the flying sword's struggle didn't decrease, but it got more violent. When the spiritual energy surrounding the flying sword was fading, Wang Lin clenched his teeth and spat out another mouthful of spiritual energy to keep refining it. The night slipped by and the sword struggle finally seemed to have decreased a bit. Wang Lin's face was pale. He had already spat out dozens of mouthfuls of spiritual energy. Even with his 15th layer cultivation level, and with the help of the spirit liquid, he could barely hang in there. The morning light shone into the room as Wang Lin continued his refining of the sword. The flying sword was no longer struggling. It floated in the air as slivers of Wang Lin's spiritual energy entered it. The moment Wang Lin's expression changed, he heard a knock, followed by Jiang Hu's voice. Wang Lin, do you want to go with me to the weapon store? Wang Lin took a deep breath and said, Jiang Hu, I'm at the critical point of my refining, so I can't go. Jiang Hu was stunned. He pondered for a while, then, without a word, sat down cross-legged in front of Wang Lin's door. Wang Lin no longer bothered with Jiang Hu and continued to refine. Time slowly passed until it was night. Wang Lin had already drank 3 gourds of spirit water, but the refining was still not over. In desperation, Wang Lin had to ask Situnan for advice. Situnan slowly said, "Kid, finally figured out that you should come to me? Humph, I've been waiting. If you go into closed-door training for 10 years and use up a lot of spiritual power, you might have a chance to successfully refine it. I'm talking about the real world, not the space in the heaven-defying bead." Wang Lin frowned and asked, "That long?" Situnan slowly said, "Of course. This is a core formation treasure and a super high-grade cow formation treasure at that. A crazy core formation cultivator must have made it while they were tackling nascent soul cultivators and, by risking their chance to successfully reach nascent soul, they used the moment of breakthrough to refine this treasure. This person was really a madman. I have also wanted to do this, but after considering it for a long time, I gave up. Although failing to reach nascent soul isn't too bad, breaking through to nascent soul is the very dangerous moment. One misstep and your soul will completely disappear. That Baizan must have also received help from the Creator to make it his personal weapon. If I still had my body, it would be easy to refine, but now, even I can't do much." However, Wang Lin already knew about this old guy's temper and that he liked to tempt people, so Wang Lin wasn't worried and waited. After a while, Situnan sighed and muttered, "Forget it. I'll tell you this, if you use the normal method of refining, it will take too much time. I'll teach you a method called the blood refining technique. The advantage is that you can instantly make this flying sword your own. However, the disadvantage is that if the flying sword takes damage, you will also take damage. But with the time required to refine it, the damage you'd take would be several times worse than other methods." Wang Lin pondered a bit and said, "Tell me how to use this blood refining technique." Situnan just wanted to leave Wang Lin in suspense for a bit, but realized that this kid would probably just ignore him, so he decided to speak, but he raised one condition. "I haven't touched a woman in so many years. No matter what, you must let me be satisfied, even if I'm just watching." Wang Lin vaguely answered Situnan. Then, his hand formed strange seals according to Situnan's directions. He bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood filled with spiritual power. Then, he moved his hands and a strange symbol appeared in the air. The moment the symbol appeared, the blood started to enter the symbol. Soon, all of the blood was absorbed and all that remained was a blood-colored symbol. Wang Lin waved his hand and the symbol landed on the sword. The flying sword trembled and immediately started to release strands of white gas. Wang Lin immediately spat out another mouthful of blood. He looked weaker, but his eyes looked more determined. He formed another strange symbol that absorbed the blood and was shot toward the flying sword. This process lasted several hours. It wasn't until the morning that a sharp sword hum came out of Wang Lin's room. Jiang Hu, who had been sitting outside Wang Lin's room the whole time, immediately stood up. The door silently opened. Wang Lin's face was carrying a bright smile. His mood was very good right now. He said, "Thank you, Jiang Hu." Jiang Hu looked at Wang Lin with a strange expression and asked, "What were you doing? Why did I just hear that sword hum just now?" Wang Lin opened his mouth and a small, green flying sword immediately flew out. The moment the sword appeared, a smell of blood surrounded the area. Jiang Hu was stunned and asked, This is my teacher's flying sword? You managed to refine it? Eh? Why is there such a strong scent of blood?" Wang Lin nodded. He waved his right hand and the flying sword returned to his side and entered his mouth again. Wang Lin was also very irritated over this strong scent of blood. Situnan only told him near the end that all treasures refined using the blood refining technique would have a bloody scent and, as it kills people in the future, the scent will only get stronger. Jiang Hu hawked the flying sword. After a long time, he took a deep breath and said, "Wang Lin, I'm impressed. With this flying sword, people of the same level will no longer be a threat to you. This sword's special ability is teleportation. The distance varies depending on the spiritual power of the user, but, when used unexpectedly, it is a very good ace." The two exchanged a few words. When Jiang Hu was about to leave, He reminded Wang Lin that the monthly exchange fair was in 3 days and that Wang Lin should prepare for it. After Jiang Hu left, Wang Lin took out the sword scabbard. Even Situnan kept praising this sword scabbard and didn't know what rank of treasure this was. Wang Lin originally thought that this flying sword and sword scabbard were part of a set, but, after refining the flying sword, he noticed the difference between the two. Upon closer inspection, the sword scabbard released a very strong killing intent. The closer Wang Lin looked, the stronger the killing intent became, until his mind would go blank and he could only see the faint illusion of a sword.